So we have people joining. Okay. Okay. Cool. So we're live now. How do I open this? Hey guys, what's up? My name is Rohan Arora. I'm a first year VI student at VIT, Computer Science Engineering. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Rohan Arora. I'm a first year VI student at VIT, Computer Science Engineering. Okay, sorry for that. Let me just get my settings right. Cool. So today we're gonna learn how to like demystifying UI UX. This workshop is basically for somebody who is willing to get into UI UX. It starts from beginning. It's a very beginner level workshop, and we'll just get right into it. So first of all, what are we gonna discuss today? So the first thing we're gonna discuss today is what is UI UX? How do I get into UI UX? What are the opportunities that might come into UI UX in the first, let's say, 4 to 5 years? And how can somebody from zero, not in a design college, get into UI UX, even though if you're an engineer or you are a commerce student or anything? Okay, so very few basic questions that I usually get when somebody is beginning into UI UX is that I'm not good at drawing, and I really want to answer that I myself, I barely know how to draw, I barely know how to do good art. But yeah, UI UX is something that only needs creativity and brain. Other than that, all you need is a pen, paper. The best way is to get a laptop and a mouse. That's all you need. UI UX is not about being an artist. It's more about doing your research well. If you are someone who loves to study about psychology or human behavior, and you want to know how people usually work around, so UI UX is something for you. Next thing that gets to me is, as a first year, I myself thought of this, is that I do not know how to code. In my 12th grade, in the additional subjects that I took in, the subject that I went for was fine arts, because I was also preparing for JE, so I couldn't go for computer science basically. So I do not know how to code at all. I cannot even print like hello world in C++ or C, and I still do pretty good in UI UX, as everybody know. So you do not need to learn how to code. Now next thing is why we are keeping this presentation today, that how do I get started. So let's get started. Basic. So all you need is to download a tool. The tool I usually go for is Figma. Why Figma? Because it's free for everyone. It has a few limitations although, and all you need is a mouse and Figma on your laptop and just a good internet connectivity. Decently anything works for you. Now let's get into what UI and UX is. First of all, you might think that the font size for UI here is smaller than UX. Is this guy crazy? Does he not know how to compare font size? That has a very specific reason. Okay, let's get into the reason first of all. Why UI is smaller here than UX? So UX is a very vast field. UX includes of psychology, human decision making, user research, personas, user stories, workflows, A/B testing, statistical evaluations. Whereas UI, only comprises of graphic design, colors, font, background, buttons, stock images, icons. That's it. Okay, so UI is let's compare this with a book that you are reading. Let's say you're reading H.C. Verma. H.C. Verma, let's say the cover of the book is the UI. The font that they have used, the layout they've used, they've kept a picture of a monkey over a question just to illustrate what that question is. So the UI is basically what kind of font are they using? Is the image black and white? Is the whole book black and white? Are they using colorized images? Or what color of cover are they using? That is the UI of the book. What UX is that kind of questions that Professor H.C. Verma make. So the whole reason why a book is being sold, why H.C. Verma is so famous is just because the quality of questions that are there in that book are beautiful, and that is the sole reason why a user or a student goes to the market and the only name he or she takes is Bhaiya, give me HC Verma both the parts. That's it. So now when we design a product, here we are not designing applications, we are not designing websites. What we are designing is products. So when we design a product, the main focus you need to keep upon is the user experience and not the user interface. User interface is something that can be achieved very easily. I assure you, like you can call yourself a UI designer after you give yourself one day. Let's say not like one day completely, even if you give yourself 12 hours, you can call yourself UI designer. All you need to know is you need to study a few guidelines and you need to know how to operate a tool. That's it. And you get better at UI design once you start learning more stuff. So what is UX? Let's start with psychology. Psychology is the basic behavior of how a human interacts with anything. Human decision making. Human decision making is basically, let's say there are two buttons. There's a cancel button and and let's say there's a dismiss button and there's a accept button. When you're going out to pay somebody, you have two options. Either you decline it or you make a payment. So it depends on you. If you give the user enough reasons to accept what you are giving away, he would definitely go for accepting that behavior. That is how human decision making works. The user want a benefit out of everything. Trust me, a user want benefit out of everything that you are going away through. So all you need to do is give them that benefit, show them that this is the benefit our product is giving to you, and why they should choose your product over any other product. User research. This is very crucial. If you are a company who makes a hammer, yeah, a very basic hammer, and you want to sell it, are you gonna use a picture of a teacher holding that hammer? No, right? You need to know what your user is, who your user is, what he does, what he or she does. So you need to understand your users pretty well. What is a persona? Persona is basically how a CV works, a resume when you submit a job. So persona is basically a resume of a user. Let's say we are making an application for somebody who's a student. Now, how would you define a persona? A persona consists of a user's name, a user's behavior, a user's routine, and what the user does, how much. Let's say if you are making an application, a mobile application, you will write down on an average how much time does he or she spend on his phone. So these are all hypothetical situations where you create a hypothetical user which usually symbolizes a group of people so that each and everybody's problems are solved. We make personas in order to solve problems which are on a large scale. User stories. User stories are basically, let's say my Instagram is been crashing a lot. Now, why do I use Instagram? I use Instagram in order to text my friend, but every time I press the enter key, my Instagram crashes. This is a problem for me. This is a UX problem that my Instagram is crashing, and this is getting very irritating for me. So how do I solve this? A user reports it to the developers, but is it actually a developer's reason? It is basically taking your users away to some other social media. You as a UX designer need to clarify that your app or your website should not crash. The experience that a user is going through should be smooth, very smooth. So this is a problem in UX. So a user story would be something like, I woke up in the morning and the first thing I do is I open up my Instagram, but my Instagram keeps on crashing, and that is really irritating me. What do I do? I report it, and this is coming out to be a UX problem. And what the UX team would do is solve this problem using your story. You would turn out to be a hypothetical user who has such a problem. What are workflows? Workflows are pretty self-explanatory, that it is your click over taking you from login screen to the end of your whole application is basically your workflow. A/B testing. Okay, so here it gets a little tricky. When you design a UX for any possible application, you make two or three alternatives of it. You do not clarify that the solution you have made is the only solution possible. You do not do that. You make two different iterations of the whole problem, and then you give it out to users in order to check which sort of a problem is more solvable to them. Statistical evaluation is something where you see which user has turned out to be having a lesser problem, which has been an easier solution for their problem. Now let's get into UI designing. You know what graphic designing is, right? Graphic designing consists of posters, typography, and images and everything. Color theory is something very important. Let's say okay, tell me one thing. Why is Paytm and PayPal both white and blue in color? Because blue color symbolizes something which resonates with the idea of such companies. And when you're giving away a product to a user, you need to make them feel comfortable with what sort of colors are they using. Why in my presentation myself I have used a little tint of pink or red in order for you to take care of something like UX or UI, so that you can concentrate more over it. This is something color theory helps you with. Now fonts, it's basically comes into typography. Let's say a font like sans serif, it gives you a little bit more feeling of being a professional, and serif, whereas it gives you a feeling of being very legendary or very exclusive. Backgrounds, you need to choose your backgrounds as needed, because then the vibe that your UI usually gives depends on them. We'll be coming after buttons and stock images and icons, which are pretty self-explanatory by themselves in a further while. Okay, now how do I learn UI designing? Learning UI designing is very easy, trust me. It took me it took me less than a day in order to get into UI pretty well, just to learn how UI works and make an app out of something, or just give it away to developers. It is very easy, but all you need is fast learning skills, and you need to know how what is going on in the community, how design patterns are changing, how design systems are changing. We'll talk about what design patterns are, what design systems are. Okay, so first of all, you need to learn a tool. We have three kinds of tools which are very popular right now. One is Figma, other is Sketch, and the third one is Adobe XD. Now, all these have their own similarities and dissimilarities. Let's talk about Adobe XD. Adobe XD is basically by Adobe, very self-explanatory. It's the full form of Adobe XD is Adobe Experience Design. And why people prefer it? Because currently it's free and it's offline to use. Sketch is a Mac only tool. You cannot use it anywhere other than Mac. And Figma is a web browser based web app where you can design UI. It's a pretty good tool. So which one do I prefer? I personally prefer Figma. The reason why I prefer Figma over any other designing app currently, be it Illustrator, because Figma has its own way to make illustrations using pen tool, which is way better than what Adobe is giving away right now. Why I use it is it's easier to collaborate. I can work with three or four people currently. Let's say I'm a part of a club who is going to give away an application. So if I have a small team who is working on the same app, I would make it on Figma because all these people can work together in real time. So once you are done learning, if you want to learn Figma, all you need to do is there's this channel called Abnux, ABNUX. It's on YouTube. There's a 25 minutes video. All you need to do is go and watch that video and you will be thoroughly good with Figma. Next thing. Okay, before, can I see a little, like a few highs in the chats? How many people are watching? Cool, I can see one high. Alright, sub. Okay, so let's understand what design systems are. Currently, the two most famous design systems that are going around is first is material design system, which is by Google. The second one is Apple's human computer interaction system. These two are one of the most famous ones because basically these are the companies that are currently making the most mobile phones right now. So, like, are they really necessary for you to learn? It would be better if you learn design system because it makes your life really easy. When you start designing UIs and you use components out of these design systems, it gets really easy for you to like turn around and have like make it easier for you. All you need to do is copy a few components and paste them somewhere else, and your UI is completed, which would look very symmetrical and very beautiful. Other thing is, do you really need to use them? I personally do not use any sort of components because I love to make my own components and it gives me the creative freedom in order to design any sort of UI. So if a developer comes up to you and he says, dude, I want you to follow the material guidelines so that I can make the app easily. If you really want that gist of the app to give them a little beautification, just ask them not to follow that. Just create your own design system, create your own components, and you're good to go. But there are a few design rules. For example, in Apple, you cannot use a floating action button. So for that, you'll have to read the material guidelines and the human computer interaction guidelines. So first checkpoint, you need to learn a tool, which is Figma. Second, you need to learn design systems, but you do not need to follow them. It depends on you. And third is you have to be thorough with what sort of design patterns are going on right now. So what sort of design patterns am I talking about? Okay, so there are various which is coming up. Something like skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism is that new technical thing that has been used in CRED, which is blowing up very often. Something other than that is flat design, which is being used in every single app right now. There is no shadow, nothing. Open up your Instagram, the sort of design patterns you see is skeuomorphism. Design pattern other than that, let's open Tinder and the swiping action of a card, that is a design pattern. And what is a portfolio? So in portfolio, it's wait one second. Portfolio is something where you show up your whole name, your who are you, what are you doing, and what has been happening currently. So what sort of projects you've been working upon, what you've been doing, everything. So let's say I created a UI and I wanted to show it to people. Where do I show it? Portfolio have variant ways. First is your own PDF. You create a PDF document which is called your own portfolio. That is how it works in design colleges. Second very famous portfolio website is Dribble. You can create your own Dribble account and just throw away your links to people. There's Behance. Behance is very famous platform which is by Adobe, and the other one you can create your own website. So once you're done with all this, you have become a UI designer. Now the whole point is how do you get better at UI design? So in order to get better at UI design, you need to learn how to steal like an artist. Steal Like an Artist is a book by Austin. It's a beautiful book. If you want to get into design or anything which is a creative field, I would suggest you to like read this book. The book's gist is you have you want to create a design. You take inspiration from one, you take inspiration from two. No, you take inspiration from a bunch of designs. You take buttons from one design, search bar from other, text from some other one, font from some other one, and background color and your primary color from some other design. You collaborate all these five, six patterns and you create one new design. That's how you steal like an artist and not like a thief. So, how do you get better? Take inspiration, keep copying, and keep posting stuff. You get better at UI design just by learning things, just by knowing how to solve problems. Just keep practicing. That's how it goes. We might like if it depends on the audience. If you guys want, today we can take an interactive session where we can actually discuss how UI design works, and I can demonstrate how to make a UI of any popular app. So now the main thing that comes out is how do you get started with UX design? So in order to get started with UX design, UX again is a very vast field. You cannot get started with UX today. You cannot become a UX designer by today itself. You need to learn, you need to study a lot, you need to read a lot of articles. You need to like read a lot of books about human psychology and how everything in user works out. So things we need to understand, UX is all about human psychology. You do not need to understand anything other than understanding the user. Unlike UI design, you cannot become a UX designer in one day. UX helps a product to stand out. As I told you, why does people prefer buying H.C. Verma over any other book? Because the material inside that book is goddamn amazing. And that is how you need to make your products goddamn amazing. So UX is something that will help you sell your product over anything. Even if you have a shitty book cover and you have a quality content just like Etsy Verma, I can bet you $100 that your book will sell more than Etsy Verma. Design thinking is something we need to emphasize when we try to design a product. So design thinking currently have five steps. First is emphasizing, second is design, third is ideate, fourth is prototype, and fifth is test. One very important thing that we need to keep into notice is that all these processes are not linear. Once you get into emphasizing, you can directly jump to ideating, or from prototyping you can get back to defining. So what all this is, let's say you want to develop an app about something, but you do not know what something is. All you need to know is, let's create an audience which is facing a problem X. Now you have to get in their shoes, you need to empathize with them, you need to understand what their problem is. Let's say you are in a long distance relationship. Currently, because of corona, a lot of people have turned out into a long distance relationship. Now you want to create an application for people who are into long distance relationship and they really want to continue their relationship. By the way, don't get into relationships. Okay, so if you want to empathize on it, you'll have to understand how a user works. You'll have to define their problem. So what their problem basically is, they cannot meet their peers, they cannot meet their loved ones, they need to talk to them, but they're already out of topics. So the problem we have defined here is that we need something that long distance relationship people can use and they can get some entertainment out of it. So what do we ideate? We ideate a product. What sort of a product would be feasible? Let's say you create a truth and dare application. Truth and dare applications are boring because now you have one problem. Who would ask questions? Because at the end, when they do not have questions to ask anyways, what would you do? You can do something as an auto generative questions in a TDS app where two couples are playing together, they're on a video call, and if they want to take a dare, they can do it live on their videos. It's a live TDS app. So you have ideated something. The next thing you need to do is you have to prototype. You will be creating 2 or 3 iterations of the same product. You'll be giving it out to the users. You'll have to understand who your users are, and once you have done understanding who your users are, you'll have to take care of designing a product in the same way. You make those prototypes and then you give it out for testing. You Once you are done testing, you will see that there are a few problems which need to be solved again. Let's say the whole idea of this application is bizarre. What you do is, from test you come back again to the defining process, and then you go to ideate, and then you go to prototype, and then you go to test. After test you see that there's something which is missing in the prototype. You go back to the prototype, and maybe if that is not working you go back to define. So it's basically not a linear process. You have to get into it, you have to define it completely. Again, UX is a very vast topic. I cannot teach you the whole UX in one whole day, but definitely I'm trying to go through the top of it. So one very important thing that we'll have to take care of is understanding human decision is very important. Humans are rationals, they are irrational. They are both. Like when you design an app for some user, some might find things obvious, the other might not. What do? We have two different modes of thinking. The first is slow mode thinking, the other one is fast mode thinking. So what are these modes? Let's say you are given a prototype of a new app. Let's say Instagram has started a new feature. Let's just talk about stories, right? Instagram stories is something very great which is coming up. So what do? Now you don't know how to work with stories, right? So the next thing you need to do is you'll have to go through it. So if this was something which is very common, let's say after you are done using stories on Instagram, Facebook also announces that they have stories. So now you know how stories work, right? So when you open those stories on your Facebook account, that is fast thinking mode because you already know how it works. But when you open it on your Instagram for the very first time in your life, it's a very slow process. You need to get comfortable with it. You need to understand how it works. These are two really important modes of thinking, and when you design a product you need to take care of it. Let's say something which is very variable right now, for example login into your account. You can give them a sign up with Google button, or you can give them a bunch of text field where they need to give their phone number, their email IDs, and then their username, their name, their date of birth, their gender, spice 6 field, and then the user usually gets very irritated filling them or gets very suspicious filling them. But when you ask them to sign in with Google where they already have all this information, it gets very easier for you as well as for the human to get into it. So what is the spectrum of thinking interventions? How do humans make decisions? Let's say you are familiar with something, it's your habit. Now some example of habits are eating chips. So when you design a product, let's say you have designed a packet of chips. Now how can you make that packet of chips very inventional? Let's say Pringles came up with this box function where humans are more feasible opening boxes than tearing apart pages, right? So Pringles has that UX where they've made it so easy for you the user that they are ready to pay 99 rupees for a bag of chips, which is no more a bag, it's basically a box of chips. And something very intuitive or reactional or appraisal is, let's say signing in with Google is something very important. Now choosing food from a buffet, so this is very reactive. Let's say there's butter paneer masala, there's chicken tikka, and then you know what food do you like, right? So you'll have to take it in. That's how it works. Let's say for Instagram there is a huge list of people who have sent you follow requests. How do you make it for the user easier for the user to accept your follow request or send people follow request in order for them to spend more time on your product? How do you build a habit forming product? That's how it is. Do you make things which are more of habits or something which is more of an appraisal? Why do you end up using 8 to 9 hours of Instagram every day during quarantine? Because I am spending 8 to 9 hours every day on Instagram. So what Instagram has done is it has turned up into an habit. These are a few very basic, unfamiliar and semi-familiar methods of making decision for humans, which comes into very core of UX. Once you get into those cores, you'll understand how it works. So is that it? Is that how UI or UX designing works upon? It definitely is not. If you really want to get into UX, you'll have to learn a lot. You'll have to get through design thinking, design processes, modes of design. How do you design a product? How do you do A/B testing? There are various ways of testing, like testing your products, and how do you make it more successful? So all you need to do is start learning from today. Start reading. Go on Medium. Go on YouTube. Search for channels which are specified in UX and UI. Channels like NN Groups, Abnux. There are various channels where you can learn. Also, you can use the platform made by C4 projects in order to learn a bit more about UX. You can definitely ask me questions, and you will be good to go. First of all, the only core basis of UX design is you need to understand that I am the user and I'm not the user. Sometimes when you are designing a product, you are designing it for solving your own problem, which might not be a problem for a lot of people. And the solution you have chosen might be feasible just for you or for a small group of people that you represent. But all you have to do is make a solution which is more feasible, which is feasible to a larger crowd, right? So you need to design a product. Sometimes you'll have to keep yourself in the shoes of a user. Sometimes you'll have to keep yourself away from the user in order to understand what their problem is and how does it get better. So what do I do next? The next thing you need to do is take an application, study that application. How does that work? How does the UI of that application work? Create a portfolio, create few designs, read about UX a lot, and then all you need to do is get into the field of UX design. From 5 years from now, how do I see UX design is one of the most booming one of the most booming jobs that might come, because a lot of Indian companies have started taking care of their users. Ever since Facebook has acquired a lot of companies, they've taken care of a lot of user experiences, and they've made our lives so much more easier. The only reason why you are watching this video on your phone or on your laptop is because YouTube has one of the best user experiences in the video streaming industry. So if your user experience is good, your product will sell, and for people to make their product sell, they need good UX designers. So just get started. A little bit about me. Hello, my name is Rohan Arora. I'm a UX designer, UI designer from VIT Vellore. I've currently interned at Rentbus, and I'm also a part of Smoke Trees. I am a UI UX designer at Smoke Trees. Alright, are there any questions? Seeing none. Okay, I think that should be it. Alright, okay. So Samvit here has asked, how do I build a strong portfolio? So Samvit, in order to build a strong portfolio, first of all, do not go on Dribble. Dribble is the worst way you can create a portfolio, because Dribbleization of the design industry has totally wrapped it up around. You make designs which are not feasible UX wise. All you need to do is you'll have to create clients, you'll have to talk to clients and bring them up, or you can just create a product of your own. Think about ideas, talk to people, get a mentor for yourself, ask them if they have a project that you can work upon. It's very similar to how GitHub works. You need projects in order to get better. So talk to people who are around you, make a few products for free, go talk to people, make a case study about it, and throw it on your website, publicize it as much as you can, and just like keep doing this process and you're good to go. YouTube channels or websites you recommend? YouTube channels or website about what, Adarsh? Samvit, are there any other questions? Okay, so for UI UX design, if you are more of a visual learner, I would definitely recommend you to go through YouTube channels. And if you're more of a reader who loves to read, who really want to get into depth of this, the best way for you to the best way for you to get into UI designing is reading articles and reading books. There's nothing better than reading articles and books because there's a lot of information which has been piling up since years and years. What else? Are there any other doubts? How to build the mechanism for getting new ideas, like innovative ideas. Okay, so building a mechanism for good and innovative ideas come from experiences. Again, as I told you, steal like an artist. Take an idea, take a feature from some other idea. Let's say you opt for Instagram, and then okay, if you've used Omegle before, this is one of my ideas that I'm working on currently. There's Omegle and there's Tinder. Now during quarantine, you cannot go find a good date and meet her or him, right? So what do? You meet random people and then you video call with them. Something like this is how you get up with more ideas, and this is what my mechanism of finding new ideas and working around new ideas is. You take a process out of one application, you take a process out of another application, you merge them and create a new product. You you take the best processes out of both the applications and get it out. That's how your product actually sells away. I hope that makes clear. Okay, seeing no more questions, I hope this is it. Let's wrap this up. Bye bye, guys. You're welcome.